Rival Sports Pod, covering the New York sports scene and behind the scenes, including the Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, New York Mets, and everything else in New York sports worth your precious time. And now here's Joe Pastor and Glenn Ferretti.
All right, welcome everybody for season 2 of the Rival Sports Pod. I'm Joe Pastor with my co-host Glenn Ferretti, and we're really excited today to kick off the year with our special guest Kyle Soppe from the Pro Football Network. How you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing well, guys. I mean, we're getting close to regular season football, like games that actually count. I don't know how you feel about preseason, and we've got games tonight, and we've been going through 2 weeks of this practice game stuff, and that's football, but it doesn't count. I'm getting ready for the real stuff soon. How you guys been?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of the same. You want to see how your team looks, maybe it's a little more exciting, for the Jets to see Aaron Rodgers out there.
Sure.
Because or if you have maybe a big, position battle, like for the Bills, it's like who's going to take Tremaine Edmonds spots and, a couple other things like who's going to be the corner alongside Trey White. But unless I think you're in a situation where you're getting a new quarterback, it's like, let's get the preseason over with and get into it, right?
The last time we threw our starter out there, it didn't end so well for the Jets with Zach Wilson. So I know everybody's somewhat excited to see Aaron Rodgers, but I'd be shocked if he played very long, and I'd be perfectly fine if he didn't play at all. I think he knows how to handle himself back there.
I'd say so.
And I almost wonder, I don't know if it would work for TV, but wouldn't it be better for the teams if they just did more of a controlled scrimmage type of thing? All right, we're going to just do a few possessions in the red zone. We'll do a few backed up at our goal line. Yeah. I think that would be more beneficial for the teams, but I don't know how that translates to television. So
yeah, probably not well. These guys are in the business of, dollars. If it makes dollars, it makes sense. And they're putting games on Amazon Prime. They're putting games wherever they can. And I'm just as guilty as anybody. I'm going to be watching it. So I guess I'm part of the problem, but it's the NFL. It's the beast that can't be beaten. We're all going to tune in anytime, no matter the quality, quantity, whatever. And I'm like you guys, I'm going to be watching it.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to work out this year with switching over to YouTube TV and Sunday Ticket? I saw they actually had a thing for college kids that I thought was pretty smart too. If you had a college ID, it was only like $120 or something.
The college ID, you've got some sports books offering promotions. I think it'll work. YouTube and things like that are the thing of the generation, even under me. We put all our content out on YouTube, and I'm not going to lie to you, that's not how I would consume it. But I'm 33. I'm old in this game for some people. People 15 years younger than me, that's how they consume content. My wife's a high school teacher, and that's where they get everything. So I get it. I get where they're headed. It's not aimed toward me. So it's not, it's not going to change how I do things, but I understand the direction that they're going. And they don't want to be like baseball. Baseball's for 50 and 60-year-old white guys, and eventually that's going to be a problem. They want to cater to the younger demographics across the board. And I think that's probably commendable and probably right. So the NFL, I think, a step ahead of everybody.
The streaming part of it is the only thing I'm kind of interested to see, because I've had DirecTV for years and multiple TVs and watching, and it's super crisp. Everything runs perfectly. The games are all aligned perfectly. One thing kind of gets messed up with buffering and things like that. I'll be interested to see how the first few weeks go, because obviously they're going to have more people watching on Sundays than any other show that they probably put out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, there'll be some bumps in the road, and it'll require patience like anything. But I'd be shocked if we're talking, by, I don't know, end of October, around Thanksgiving, somewhere in there, that they don't have this, humming like a fine-tuned machine that they've done for years.
Right.
So a little bit of drama in the offseason headed into Buffalo. I guess maybe that might be a good thing to start off with, is the Stephon Diggs situation, which it seemed to be settled, right, with him talking about, well, it's like an argument with your brother and, in-house types of things. And then, of course, who steps in to throw gasoline on the fire is Stephen A. Smith.
Stephen A. Smith coming from the top rope.
Yeah. So, a lot of people want to talk about it. National media wants to talk about it. For me, that's the least of my worries. Although I'm not looking forward to in the regular season when, let's say, Josh sails a pass over Diggs' head, all the cameras are going to pan on to Diggs right away, looking for a reaction. And if there's some bad body language, we're going to have to hear about it. But I'm more concerned with who's going to take Tremaine Edmonds' spot. McDermott calling the defense is a little. Although I'm a big more offensive guy, I don't think like if you look at how the Bills have exited in the playoffs, I think the Cincinnati game is more of an abomination, an aberration. But it's the defense didn't matter. Is that those are big shootout games, and what's going to make it or break it, I think, is the Bills putting 30-something points on the board, and even if the defense, even if the defense shows up, good luck stopping Mahomes.
Mahomes and winning a coin toss. That's really what it comes down to. But I mean, having Trey White, like you said, back for a full season, I think that'll help on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not worried about the drama with Diggs. I mean, these guys are all type A, testosterone, out of their mind, alpha male athletes. Like you put them in their room, everybody wants the ball on every single play. Diggs is going to get his 150 targets, his 100 catches. He's going to do what Stephon Diggs does, and that's produce at a high level. I'm not concerned about it. 3 years in Buffalo, all Josh Allen has done is feed him. He's had 100 catches in every season. He's going to produce. That connection's there. I'm not worried about it.
I can't believe Bills fans would say they're not concerned about it at all. That's incredible to me, because I just think, I don't know, when you look at like other situations, like it seems like players, like when they want something, they kind of do whatever it takes to actually make it happen. I mean, you look at it in the Jonathan Taylor situation right now. He wants out of Indianapolis and he wants to go to Miami. So it's like these teams are, and Aaron Rodgers, same thing. Like he wanted, to make his way to the Jets, and he made it happen. So I know Bills fans are saying they're not concerned, but dude, Diggs' brother is in the NFL, plays for the Cowboys. Like if he gets to the point where he truly like actually comes out and wants to make something happen, it seems like teams cater to these guys at some point, because it's like not worth having that huge distraction like in Buffalo. If they have all these other pieces, like you don't want to have somebody that's disgruntled, because this didn't just start. This obviously started last year at the end of the year.
You have to think so. I mean, this is the player development or player empowerment era. I mean, we've seen it in the NBA for years now, with LeBron James basically dictating every move that goes on in the association. So I get where you're coming from there. And to your point, Aaron Rodgers, in theory, he wanted Dalvin Cook. What do? They make it happen. They bring him into town, and they've got a promising young running back, and they still bring in a veteran that's going to be productive. So your point's well taken. But I just don't know how Diggs is going to upgrade. He's going from like a Super Bowl favorite. Like where else is up? Are you going to join the Monstars from Space Jam? I don't really know where is up from Buffalo at this point. So I think at the end of the day, this is going to make sense. And he just it's a squeaky wheel situation. He wants to be heard. They'll hear him. We'll patch things up.
Yeah. And I get playing with your brother, but like, really, you'd want to go to the Cowboys? like the Cowboys are just so completely irrelevant. These days. And I was surprised, even looking at like their like the prop bet on them for the Super Bowl was plus 1,500. They're ahead of the Jets. The Jets are plus 1,600.
They're America's team.
They're always favorites. Always favorites.
Yeah. All the homers are going to put the money on them for sure. But and
the NFC, the NFC is just weak compared to the AFC. So like, there's a more defined route there. But I'm with you. I would take the Jets over the Cowboys if it was a straight up Super Bowl bet.
Yeah, you brought up the Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall situation. I was, when it happened, obviously, I think most people were like, oh, it's great. Like, we got Dalvin Cook, certainly excited. But I was more excited just because of obviously the injury that Breece Hall is coming off of. I mean, he looks great in his first couple of days, but anything could happen with that situation. We saw what happened with Izzy. We just lost him for a few weeks, who looked really promising in the preseason as well. So, quickly we went from, 4 running backs to 3. We went from 4 receivers down to 3, pretty quickly with the Corey Davis retirement. So it's not bad to have Dalvin Cook as an insurance policy for your team. I mean, he's certainly going to be, a good back, obviously, in my mind.
Yeah, an insurance policy, and realistically, like you said, a starter probably for the first month. Like, they've bought time on the Breece Hall recovery. I mean, you're talking a late October ACL tear. Like, he's not even 11 months removed from that, and he's young and promising and plays a running back position that has no shelf life. So why rush him out there in September? Being a fantasy
guy, like where do you rank those guys? I mean, where do you value that kind of situation? Because they're obviously going to be hot picks.
Yeah, it's a moving target for everybody, for the industry right now. I come in on the kind of the contrary side here. I've got Dalvin Cook ahead of Breece Hall in my season-long ranks, just under the thought that he's going to control September. And I'm a Packers fan. I've watched Aaron Rodgers for years, and wherever he's comfortable is where everything gets dictated. And Cook's going to get the first shot at that. I'm not saying he's a better player than Hall at this point in his career, because I don't think he is. But that first month of getting reps with Rodgers and being able to prove his worth and get comfortable with him, I've got Cook just outside my top 20 running backs. I've got Hall just outside the top 25. So not a major difference in my projections line up. Pretty similar for one another. And I would understand the argument if you want to say Hall's going to be better come fantasy postseason time. Like, I get that. I just think Cook's got the leg up to start, and that's the way I'm ranking it.
Any concern of the Cook injury? I mean, he's obviously coming off a shoulder concern as well, but I mean, he seems to be in good form now. Maybe you got more information on that.
I don't have more information other than I would trust your franchise to do the homework here. You're not bringing in a compromised running back to fill in for a compromised running back, in my opinion. And maybe I'm giving the Jets too much credit here, but I would have to think they knew what was coming with the shoulder injury ahead of time. And so is he a little limited? Maybe. I'm not asking for 25 carries. Breece Hall's going to be active to start the season. If Breece Hall is looking at, 8 to 12 touches, and that means 15 to 17 for Cook, like, that puts Cook in a better fantasy spot. And I don't think it's so much usage that he's going to wear down right away.
Now, from the fantasy point, one thing that shocked me was I saw Aaron Rodgers. Most people have him ranked around like number 15 or so, like behind guys like Geno Smith, Deshaun Watson, Richardson, Tua. Even, you're going to love this, Glenn, behind Daniel Jones. I don't get it.
He's better than people think. I like Daniel Jones, but I still think it's low.
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers has weapons. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about his ranking?
I've got him at quarterback 13, so I'm kind of in that range that you're talking about from a fantasy perspective, and that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It hurts that he doesn't run the ball. Peak Rodgers could run the ball, pick up 400 yards rushing, a handful of touchdowns. He's not that guy anymore. So, I mean, that worries me, because you look at a Danny Dimes, you look at Watson, like, these guys have other ways to produce that Rodgers simply doesn't. I'm not going to fight you that Rodgers isn't more talented than those guys. I trust you there, and I'm with you. And Garrett Wilson's a stud. But beyond that, like, we've got some flameouts in Green Bay that are there. You said the Corey Davis retirement. I mean, the dude's 28 and he's retiring. And they've got a viable running game. Rodgers always has played at a slow pace throughout the year. So I don't know if his volume of passes combined with his limited rushing ability is enough to really get him in that top 12. 15 might be a little low. I've got him at 13. I've got him wedged between Danny Dimes and Geno Smith, like, two guys that run the ball that can pick up yardage that way, that aren't in a new system. Like, I get that Rodgers has been a 4-time MVP, all that good stuff, but there's going to be some sort of learning curve. Like, that's just natural. Like, he's coming from being in the same offensive system for 15 years, and now he's going somewhere brand new. So could he start slow, have the limited rushing? There's enough little dings that add up over the course of time for me to drop him outside my top 12, but not by much.
Yeah, and part of it too is I looked it up after I started watching Hard Knocks on HBO, and like watching the first episode, just as a Bills fan, it's kind of like terrifying. This thing, they had that defense, they have him now, and I don't know if you guys saw it, but he's just throwing these bombs into these little nets, and they're going red, and then he's got to throw it in the red one, and he's nailing it, but it's like, oh man, you might be in trouble.
Hey, you guys got a pretty good quarterback too.
I didn't realize that Aaron Rodgers was like such a great guy. I mean, what's all this like negative talk about him for the last 18 years? I mean, he seems like a model citizen, the greatest teammate ever. I mean, Kyle, you've been following him forever. I mean, what are we missing here from the Jets? I mean, the guy looks like the greatest player and the greatest teammate in the world.
No, and I don't doubt that right now you're undefeated, right? I mean, things are going great. What's not to like? He's got young teammates around him. He's got an organization that's ready to bend the knee for him and give him anything he wants. I don't doubt that. That's part of this. That's part of the aging curve. We saw Brady wear out his welcome to a degree in New England and go to greener pastures. Like, it's just part of how this thing goes. And these guys are elite athletes that think the world of themselves. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. Like, they're way more egocentric than I am, or that I could ever be, but that's why they're a professional athlete and I'm just a scrawny guy talking about them. Like, they won the game of life here, and there's a reason for that. And, that comes with its negatives, but he's an alpha that's going to get what he wants, and he's comfortable. He likes that. This franchise hasn't won in a long time, and they're counting on him to do that, and I think he likes the positive attention.
Yeah, and how much is it of like the media, maybe the way they portray Aaron Rodgers, kind of like going back to the Diggs thing, right? Like, what's going to get people to click on it? This article that, Aaron Rodgers is this good teammate, or Aaron Rodgers is this awful human being, or everything is fine with Diggs, or he wants out of Buffalo. What are people going to click on?
Yeah,
Yep.
they open the season 2 and 4. You'll get some of those negative vibes and those negative back page articles there in New York. You'll get the negative, but if they're 5-1 and everything's kosher, like Rodgers will be great.
Yeah, things will change quickly. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts because it kind of seems like Rodgers is the coach of the team too, especially the offensive coach, and that's been kind of one of my biggest concerns. I know a lot of people are talking about the offensive line, but I feel like that's going to kind of come together with Becton going to be starting and then Dwayne Brown coming back. But I think one of the biggest question marks is really like Robert Saleh and the coaching staff. I know he could coach defense. He's obviously proved that, but what are your thoughts about actually him and Hackett running like an efficient offense? Because we really haven't seen that in New York in a while.
No, not New York, but when Hackett was with Green Bay, like they did their thing. And like I said, they go slow and they just want to efficiency you to death. They don't want to overwhelm you. They don't want to win like Joe's Bills are going to win. Like they don't want to win 38-31. They want to win 24-23, 27-20, whatever. They want to say, we can't out-volume you, but in our few red zone trips, we're going to outproduce you. And Rodgers is better than anybody at that. When he was in Green Bay with Hackett, they had this high rush rate between the 20s. Then they get in close, and it's all Rodgers all the time. And you see these bizarro touchdown to interception rates, and they win 13 games every year. And it works because they have Rodgers, and he's better at doing Aaron Rodgers things than your quarterback. It's just the way it is. He's better being Aaron Rodgers than Josh Allen would be. If they get the Bills in a nip and tuck game in the 20s, they can win. If Allen's getting that game in the 30s, I don't think Rodgers has much of a chance.
Yep. Yeah, and I like this season for Josh Allen. I'm thinking of big things, and the reason is if you look back to his career when he made his big progressions, right? So when they brought in Beasley and John Brown, you saw a big improvement in him. Then when they brought Diggs to the table, they made an improvement. They didn't bring big names in, but I think they brought in, enough supporting guys. Maybe Kincaid, you could say, is a big name with the first round, but guys like Sherfield and Hardy, there's some supporting cast as opposed to last year, right? When Emmanuel Sanders leaves, they don't really bring anyone in. They're just counting on Gabe Davis to step up, and that didn't work out. Isaiah McKenzie isn't even with the team anymore. So I'm looking at that big because, because he's Josh Allen. Question for you.
Sure.
And so for both of you guys, how many players have scored more touchdowns? Can you name them in their first 5 seasons than Josh Allen? So it could be rushing, receiving, passing.
In the history of the NFL?
Players? History of the NFL, their first 5 seasons.
First 5 seasons. So you got to be talking 170 ballpark for Allen. So that would be 30. It's got to be a quarterback.
Right.
It's not Manning. It's not Brady. It's none of the old timers because they didn't score enough.
Yeah, I feel like the trick question's Mahomes, but it's probably not him.
No.
Yeah.
Mahomes is a decent guy.
You
I would have
thought
thought like a greatest show on turf, like a Kurt Warner, but I don't think he was there early enough. Matt Ryan comes to mind, somebody like that.
Yeah. Glenn's onto it. It's a trick question. There's nobody.
Nobody. Okay.
That's how good. That's how good. Thanks for playing along. But that's how good Josh Allen is. And another conversation we have about Josh Allen is whether he is an elite quarterback, or not, and where we put him. It's been an ongoing debate on the show. Where are your feelings of him in the pantheon of things?
As far as a passer, you're talking, or just a quarterback position? Because he's
overall quarterback for your team, or both. I think they're both.
He's elite right now.
Topics.
If I have to pick him for 1 year, does his running into traffic and his chaotic plays scare me from time to time? Sure, but you're talking about a kid that was raised on the Brett Favre era of doing things under center. I can handle a little chaos back there. Like, I'm not worried about that. And he's not Mike Vick size-wise. Like, my man's a big dude, and he hasn't gotten hurt yet. The touchdowns are there both through the air and on the ground. Do the interceptions scare me? He's got 29 over the past 2 years. Of course they do, but you got to take the good with the bad. And if you're going to be in a high volume, high passing offense, like there's going to be mistakes. I don't care who you are. Mahomes throws his fair share of interceptions. He makes bad plays on occasion, not a ton. Like, would I take Mahomes over Allen if I was starting a dynasty team right now? I would. But that list ahead of Allen's short for me. I would put him in tier 1. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know we've talked about obviously him being elite, and I think, the biggest thing that we haven't seen is kind of the Bills put like a real running game around him so he doesn't have to do everything. And I think that's kind of like you said, the struggles he's got into and some of the mistakes he's made is because he literally has to make the biggest plays at the biggest times because there is kind of the no outlets outside of the wide receivers that he has. So, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel or even where you rank like a James Cook or whoever's going to be playing running back for them, but I don't know if they've even addressed it this year. To me, when I was watching some of that preseason, I was like, a lot of the same is what I was seeing out of them.
Yeah, I mean, with Devin Singletary in Houston now, James Cook opens up a big role. I've got him running back 23, so that's fringe starter in fantasy, and I feel good about it. I'm higher than our consensus on him. And I think he could push 1,300 yards, maybe get into the end zone 8 to 10 times. I like what I've seen out of him. I have him ranked just behind his, brother in Delvin, but I do think he offers a level of versatility. We know the efficiency is going to be there on the ground just because defenses can't key, nor should they, on the run game in Buffalo. For fantasy, the touchdowns are a little hit and miss. They're fluky as it is, and then Allen is basically your fullback anyway, so there's that. But I think James Cook is probably the best running back you've had, or at least that I've had projected for Buffalo during the Allen era, or at least close to it.
Kind of surprising that they struggle like to run the ball because of how much of a threat Josh Allen is. Yeah. Like it seems like the Chiefs handed off to Pacheco and he's gone because everyone's so nervous about Mahomes throwing the ball. But it's actually been kind of surprising that the Bills have kind of only had some spurts of good running games, but they don't really commit very much to it, obviously.
Another thing about the Bills is I mentioned not committing to helping the receivers last year. They never really committed to the interior line very much, particularly at the guard position. Bringing in guys that were coming off rookie contracts that were disappointments or aging veterans. And they finally spent some draft capital getting Osiris Torrance from Florida in the second round. And he's battling Ryan Bates for a starting position. And he's a bigger guy, bigger guard. So maybe they're trying to do that. They bring in Latavius Murray and Damian Williams. Do I know what I'm talking about? Damian Harris. Thank you. But yeah, they bring in these guys and it seems like they are trying to address the offense. And that's why I'm, optimistic because they just can't help themselves from adding like defensive linemen. Like you let Tremaine Edmonds go and then you give, big contract to Ed Oliver. You bring in Leonard Floyd. They just can't help themselves for just, and the defensive line is obviously important, but it's nice to see them doing that to the offense. But where do you think are some Bills maybe that could help you on fantasy based on where they're being drafted? Like, obviously, Josh Allen's a great player, but is that case, is he being drafted too high where you'd be better off,
Yeah, I mean, I don't end up with Josh Allen a ton. He's generally going in the back of the second round, early third round, which I don't mind. Like the running backs and receivers going in that area aren't overly appealing to me. So if you're a Bills homer or a Bills fan, you're not going to lose your league because you drafted Josh Allen early. Like, could he disappoint a little bit? But what's the worst case? As long as he's healthy, he's 30 passing touchdowns, 4,200 yards, and 10 rushing touchdowns, pretty much in the bank. So for the Bills, I don't have a problem with that. I'm higher on Diggs than consensus. I've got him at receiver 4. He's a fringe first-round pick for me, and I believe it. Like, I mean, he hasn't given us a reason not to. Like I said, over 100 catches in every season with Buffalo. But I'm back in on Gabe Davis. Like, I'm willing to be burned again. I don't care. The dude is talented. He was 6th in the NFL in routes run last year, and that's just a product of how this offense plays. His target share nearly doubled. The dude stretches the field. He makes plays. I think he could offer a little higher floor than he has in years past. I've got him projected for roughly 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think he could get there with some spike weeks. So, like I said, wide receiver 34 for me, higher than the consensus on him. I'm walking away with Davis probably more than any other Bill this draft season.
Yeah, he's the guy as a Bills fan who really frustrates you because we see the potential. We see the potential in him that you do. Then you don't always get the results. A very feast or famine. Drops are a problem. He had an injury last year for whatever that's worth. But I think that's an interesting conversation you brought up. Is like the top wide receivers in fantasy because obviously everyone has Jefferson and Chase one or two. then I think you start to get some question marks with like, Cooper Kupp with his injury history and Matthew Stafford's injury history. Is it a Tyreek Hill? Is it a Devontae Adams
That's what I was going to ask you. You guys are the
Diggs.
AFC East. You got the AFC East fans here. Who's your number one receiver in that division?
I mean, I think it's probably at least it's got to be Diggs for me as well at this point until, we see more of Garrett Wilson. I mean, I would love to put him up there, but, you guys still got Tyreek Hill, nobody on the Patriots.
Too. Yeah. Nobody
Waddle being the best, probably number 2 in the game. But yeah, I mean, they have, I think, Garrett Wilson's receiving over under at 86.5 catches. I mean, that's pretty big for a second year receiver. So I love the Jets and I love him, but I was like, that's a tough over bet for me this early in the season. I think they'd take them over 9.5 wins though.
I think you're on there. I would prefer the wins to the catch total. I have them projected for 87 catches and 1,200 yards. So I guess that's an over by the slimmest of margins. So I'm with you there. But a good season. Yeah. As far as fantasy goes, I've got him at wide receiver 10. It's about where he's being drafted. I fear that he's being drafted pretty much at his ceiling. Like, I'm not sure there's a lot of room for profit in where he's currently going. But, I mean, Rodgers keeps comparing him to the other 17 he played with and Devontae Adams. So expectations are high, and I think that deservedly so.
Yeah, I love those candid parts of Hard Knocks because I know a lot of it is definitely for the camera. But when he's like sitting around talking to Mark Sanchez and, kind of asking him what he thinks about Garrett Wilson, and he's like, I got to kind of speed up. He's like, this guy's like so fast that my passes are off due to him. It's like he's not doing that, for the camera. He's having a conversation with another quarterback. It's kind of a cool little inside look, but it's like, yeah, I mean, the guy does look lightning fast on the field. I mean, he's challenged by Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed every day in practice. I mean, no other better way to get better every single day is to have those guys guarding you. So it's quite the competition out there.
Yeah. It is. And I think Tyreek Hill's another interesting guy to bring up too, because of what he produced last year based on his quarterback situation with all the time that Tua missed. And he still put up those numbers, which even going into before the season started, that was a talk last year is, are you going to see a big regression from Hill now that he's going from Mahomes to Tua? And everybody thought there would be. And why wouldn't you? But there wasn't.
No, and everybody thought Mahomes would regress too, and he didn't have a problem.
No. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. He does that without watching any game film as well. Apparently, he just plays Madden football too.
That's hilarious.
So this guy went from Kansas City to Miami, didn't watch any film, and still had that kind of season. So I think he could get it done pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, no, they're just built different. And Waddle was super impressive too. I mean, he went from this shallow, like Juju Smith-Schuster role his rookie year, and now he's downfield leading the league in yards per catch. So I think what they have there is special. Miami averaged 6.5 yards per play when Tua was on the field last year. That would have led the league. Like, I don't think people understand that this offense was as good as any in the NFL when they had their starting quarterback. And I get the concussion concerns and all of that's real. He's one hit away from, serious missed time here. But going into the year, like, this offense is as potent as any in the game.
Yeah. So we talked, I think, a little bit about Danny Dimes earlier, and my buddies would love me to ask you this because they're super high on Darren Waller. So what are your thoughts on him in that offense this year?
Yeah, I bet your New York buddies here getting a little over their skis because of the preseason week 2 there, and everything was just funneled his way. But I'm in with them. Like, if Travis Kelce cost you a first-round pick this year, that's a little hard to work around because I don't really know where he can go from last year. He led the position by over 100 fantasy points last season. He pretty much needs to do that again to return a profit here. I've got Darren Waller as my 4th ranked tight end. That's, again, ahead of the industry. I like him over George Kittle, over types like that. So I'm getting a fair share of Waller. It's Waller, Hawkinson in the first half of the draft, or I'm waiting forever to address the position. But I mean, there's no denying Waller leads that team in targets, right? I mean, they've got a million slot receivers, but they don't have anybody else that's going to even flirt with 70, 80 catches. Like, I get that Daniel Dimes isn't a perfect quarterback, but he's good enough to get Waller the damn ball. That's going to happen. Waller, top 5 tight end for me and a good value where he's being drafted right now.
All right, there you go, Giants fans. Take your Darren Waller early or get nobody else. But I did have a Jets question earlier. I was talking to Joe about this because I think a lot of the hype is around, that the Jets are going to be, a top team, or certainly, be someone that competes. So barring injury, I'd be interested to know like why you think it wouldn't work out for the Jets this year.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to the wrong person here. I think they're going to be fine. I mean, I guess if you were going to make a bear case about them, it would be they struggle in the division. Like the Bills and the Dolphins are great. Maybe run into a tough Patriots game. You end up 2-4, something like that in the division. I think that could trip you up. But to be honest with you, I'm in on the Jets, and it wouldn't shock me if they're going toe-to-toe with the Bills for this division. The way their schedule runs out is perfect for Rodgers. They've got the early bye. So you get your early reps in, you make your adjustments with the week off, you come back. They end the season with a pretty light December slate here. If you ask me, I would go over their 9.5 wins right now. I mean, I could give you the negative case, and it's this running game never figures it out, and Aaron Rodgers is washed. I could say all those things. I don't believe it, though. Like, I think they're a good team. I don't want you to get too excited because I know Jets fandom has been tough on you over the last decade or so, but I think you got something to be excited about here.
Well, it's hard for us to get overly excited because you're talking to two Mets fans who went all in on two 40-year-old pitchers this year, and now my football team went all in on a 40-year-old quarterback.
That's
so
fair.
I think I'm gonna kind of calm it down a little bit just based on what happened to the Mets season.
That's fair. I would take the Jets' expectations now over what the Mets have been, and I would take that to the bank. So I think you're going to be better and happier in fall than you were in the summer.
Good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you had 3 teams in that division with 10 wins or more.
No, I mean, the math is going to make it hard just because you beat up on each other.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, like if they were in opposite divisions, I would take them all to win 10 games. And like you said, they still could get there. It just kind of you have to thread that needle perfectly.
I think the biggest question mark has to be Miami with the Tua situation. I just, the injury, the head injuries, what he went through last year, and that makes me nervous, for him.
It's scary, until they trade for Jonathan Taylor, and then we're all like, oh, they're the best team in the division now. So, I mean, it could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in Mike White to solidify the backup QB role to a degree. Not that he's Tua, but maybe he's not as bad as the secondary options in Teddy Bridgewater last year. So maybe they can Band-Aid their way through it. The problem with Tua is I don't think if he gets another concussion that you're looking at a week or two off. This could be a month or two, and then we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, another quarterback on a new team is Derek Carr. And a lot of people are ranking the Derek Carr to Olave connection pretty high. What do you think about that combination down there in New Orleans?
I'm one of them. I mean, I think him to Olave is going to be good. I think Olave was just as good as Garrett Wilson last year. I mean, he's that sort of special. They've got Michael Thomas coming back into the mix, Juwan Johnson, an underrated tight end by a lot of people. And then you got Rashid Shaheed. Like, keep an eye on him. He's a big play threat, offers the speed on the opposite of Olave. And we saw Derek Carr stretch the field last year with Devontae Adams. Like, he is capable of doing that, even that's not really what people think of when they hear Derek Carr, but he can do that. You get Alvin Kamara back after the 3-game suspension to spread the field horizontally. I was asked for a bold pick this year. I went Bills over Saints in the Super Bowl. Okay. Again, that's 130-1. Like, I'm not condoning this, or it's not really a responsible bet or anything.
Your house on this?
No, but I put it in an article, so my name's going to be on it. But I do think the Saints offer more upside than they're given credit for, and that defense isn't bad. So to answer your question, yes, I think Carr to Olave is a very valuable connection. I think Carr in that offense as a whole is built to succeed.
Okay.
Yeah, anything could happen in that NFC. I mean, you pointed it out earlier.
Outside of the Eagles, like, man.
I know. It's like, everybody just assumes they're walking to the Super Bowl, but it usually doesn't happen like that in the NFL.
No,
never does.
I mean, even in the 49ers and Trey Lance, like how quickly did that career tank?
He's 23. Like, the dude still got his best life. He's a decade younger than I am. I
know, and they're talking about him getting beat out by your old boy Sam Darnold for the number 2 spot. How does that happen?
I don't know how you let that happen from the 3rd overall pick just a minute ago, but I hope he lands on a good team. We've talked about Atlanta or situations like that where he can potentially get a chance to show something. I mean, he's still that athletic profile with a big arm. Like, yes, he didn't work out in San Fran, and San Fran's a goldmine for quarterbacks under Kyle Shanahan, but I'm still intrigued. Like Gabe Davis, I'm ready to be burned by Trey Lance again. Just get him in a spot where he's got a shot to do something.
Yeah, it's like the Zach Wilson situation. He kind of needs to go sit behind someone for a few years.
Learn.
I mean, yeah, learn. I mean, Zach Wilson, I've never heard him like so excited to know he's sitting out for the next 2 years. But I mean, you're going to learn from the best. I mean, Rodgers did it. I mean, he sat behind Favre. I mean, it's, Mahomes sat out. I mean, these things happen.
And there's that one clip you hear Rodgers telling him pre-snap, throw it to Malik, throw it to Malik. That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to play football. I mean, this guy has not played a lot of football, and now he's in the NFL. I mean, at some point that comes back to, he played at North Dakota State, right, and didn't play a lot of football. I mean, that's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, I mean, he dominated kids in high school. Like, that was forever ago, and these are grown-ass men. Like, that's a problem. But I think he can do it. Like, we've seen the physical tools. It's like Anthony Richardson right now, except Richardson's going to get the chance from day one to learn that way. Trey Lance wasn't afforded that and hasn't been up to this point. I hope he gets a chance somewhere. I think he will eventually. We'll see.
But are you all in on Brock Purdy too? I mean, I still have my questions about him. I mean, at some point he still was Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, is he automatically Tom Brady like everyone's making him out to be?
I hate that parallel because it's like, oh, this guy was drafted, way late, in Brady's case late, in Purdy's case last. And now just because he had some success, we're willing to compare him to the GOAT? Like, come on now. That's like saying every 6'8" person's LeBron James. Like, it doesn't quite work that way for me. Purdy was great, but I think it was a little unsustainable, a little smoke and mirrors, and a little bit Kyle Shanahan, which he still gets the benefit of the doubt of because Shanahan's still there. And he's got the perfect offense built around him. He's got all these yak monsters all over the place. So for fantasy, like, yes, Purdy's a quarterback too. He's fine. For leading a team to a Super Bowl, like, I mean, if he wasn't in the NFC, I'd be a little more concerned. But yeah, I think the public is a little more optimistic on him now than I am. And it's nothing he's done. It's just I need to see it over 20 games. Like, give me 20, 25 games, not 7 or whatever he had last year.
Yeah. The other thing is Purdy's not going to benefit from the espionage, the illegal feeds in the helmet, the deflating the footballs, the spying. He's not going to have all those advantages. I can't help myself.
No, that's okay. You're a Bills fan. It's
allowed. What about fantasy running backs? At the top, you got McCaffrey and Eckler and who else do you have there? I see some people got like Bijan Robinson ranked high. Sometimes even higher than Barkley or Chubb. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, no, I have Barkley over him. I've got Bijan 4th in my running back ranks. I mean, he's walking into a tailor-made situation. It's a Arthur Smith offense that wants to run the ball. He's a versatile kid. He's big, strong, and he's young, and he doesn't have any wear and tear on him in the NFL. And a lot of people, the rookie hasn't done it yet. But for the running back position, the ages like dog years over here. Like, I want a rookie. I want somebody young like that in a system that's programmed to get him the ball. I mean, they drafted Tyler Algier. He had 1,000 yards last year. He was good, and he's going to siphon off some carries, but I think there's plenty to go around. For me, the running back in the top 10 that I'm higher on than most is Tony Pollard. He's getting some juice lately. I've got him as a first-round pick. He's not quite going that high. I'm not willing to give him just his plus Zeke's numbers from last year. But Mike McCarthy wants to run the ball in Dallas. They won't be as deep of a downfield team with Kellen Moore now out of town. So I think Pollard catches 50, 60 balls. He runs for 1,500 yards. I think he scores 10, 12, 14 times. To me, he's a top 5 running back. And that's a little hot takey. So I guess that's kind of where I stand. Him and Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's boring, but I got him at running back 10. And that's higher than most. That's just getting a piece of that Cincinnati offense for me is something I want. He's coming off a career high in receptions. He's boring. He's not Bijan. He's not exciting. He's not going to break off 55-yard runs, but he's going to produce for you every week. Lock him in for his 1,210 and move on and get him in the second, third round, even in fantasy. I'm happy with that.
So, like, let's say you have what I call like the dreaded mid-late first-round pick, and let's say your board is a Bijan Robinson. Let's say Barkley's gone, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs. Who are you taking?
It's funny you say that, and I'm not just saying this because you're a nice Buffalo guy that invited me on the podcast here, but I've been getting a lot of Diggs at the end of round 1. And to be honest with you, I have him and Pollard ranked closely in my overalls, but because Pollard falls so much further, I'm taking Diggs toward the end of the first round, grabbing Pollard to start the second round. and being on my way.
Okay.
Nice. Do you do any daily fantasy as well?
We do it all here, man. We do it all. We got DFS. We got betting content. Hit me. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm just, I don't know, like philosophy wise, because I mean, I've kind of dabbled in it, but I'm not very good. I'll be honest with you. So, like, what's like an overall, like, hey, beginner getting into daily fantasy strategy that you would throw out there?
Yeah, I mean, first step one would be subscribe to PFN. We're going to have a DFS podcast every week, every Thursday coming to your feed. So check us out there if you want daily insight for every single week. But as far as kind of a macro approach, like stacking quarterback and a pass catcher goes a long ways. Obviously, you want to double dip on the offenses that you think are going to be strong. Something that gets overlooked on time to time there is a bring back. If you go, let's say it's Bills Jets, just to go with this podcast here, and you go Diggs and Allen, maybe you want to go with a Garrett Wilson on the other side. Or if you get Rodgers to Wilson, you want to go with James Cook because you think the Bills are going to be winning. You're playing that game script with James Cook, so he's eating up points, and now they're scoring, and the Jets are playing from behind. So you're trying to go Rodgers to Wilson. You have to tell a story how you want to get there. Most of these DFS sites, you've got to play a defense. I almost always pay down there just because it's the least predictive position on the field. It stinks that it's still in the game, but target some upside there. Target some matchups, and they don't always have to be the lowest scoring projected points. You want to go against Jameis Winston from last year. Yeah. Winston was going to score points. Like, he was probably going to put 25 points up on your fantasy defense, but he's going to put the ball in harm's way more often than not. That turns to interceptions. That turns to sacks. That turns to fantasy points. So I avoid getting too cute with the defense, kind of let that play out. Tight end is kind of hit and miss. Like, on this first slate of the year, you've got Kelsey, who's on Thursday night. You've got whoever plays Monday night. You're moving some of the Bills and Jets are Monday night. You're moving some of the top tight ends around. So the top end of the tight end board in the DFS pool in week 1 is different than it's going to look next week, then it'll look week 2. So take it week to week. Don't always pay down for tight end. Don't lock in strategies prior to a slate without seeing the pricing, without seeing the matchups, without seeing the weather. Like, don't lose track of the weather. As long as we get going here, it's going to be nice for this first month, you would think. But you want offenses, if you're going to stack, I love doing it in a dome. Like we talked Carr and those guys. I'm going to have a lot of Carr, Olave, Shaheed exposure, especially the deeper we go into the season. They're going to be playing on that fast track in New Orleans, and that sets them up for success. Like, it just does. So, I mean, that's kind of where I would start. Running backs, you just want volume. If you can get targets, if you can get touches, if you can get looks on a team that's going to score a little bit. Like, I'm heavy on Isaiah Pacheco in week 1 on the showdown slate to start, but for just ranking in general, because they average over almost 4 red zone trips per game during the Mahomes era. Like, that's 4 cracks at a touchdown for a guy that's a bulldozer. Like, I get that he was a 7th round pick, but he's going to get those looks. And a touchdown's going to pay off his salary. You do that with 15 carries, like now you're up to paying off your salary, and we can start talking about upside. So that's kind of where I would start there, but be fluid. I mean, injuries open up cheap plays that make a lot of sense, and follow trends.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great. I think the other thing that a lot of new players seem to get involved in is playing in those like massive games early, where they're like impossible to win. So like, I guess what types of games would be good for like newer people to get into? I know they got the 50-50s, but them inside and out. So like, what's a good starting point for someone trying to make some money early?
Yeah, I mean, 50-50s and double ups are great. You don't have to beat the whole field. Like what you're saying, these millionaire makers, the ones that run commercials on TV. Oh, I turned $1 into, 1.6 million. Like, that's great. It's also not going to happen for you. Like, the dude probably had 150 lineups in there. Like, he probably lost for 3 years prior. So if you want a lottery ticket, just know that you're going into a losing environment for that. For me, it's single entry. Anything single entry, I'm really okay with. If you want to take a shot on those high upside tournaments, there's single entry out there that pay 6 figures. It's still a big field, but it's your one lineup against my one lineup against some DFS Sharks one lineup. Are you at a disadvantage? Probably. Are you going 1 against 150 against some pro that has an algorithm spitting out the optimal plays? Like, no. So you've got a better chance. Anything single entry, anything 3 entry, anything along those lines, I'm willing to do. I just wouldn't invest too much on any single slate on any single Sunday. Don't burn yourself out and say I've got $400 for the NFL season. Don't play 200 in week 1. Like, just don't do it, because you're going to dip into that further as a season. Don't set yourself up for failure. Play what you can play what you're willing to lose. But generally, what the rule of thumb that I follow, and a lot of people in the space do, is somewhere between 80-20. 80% exposure to those cash games, those 50-50s, those double ups, those single entries. And then if 15-20% you want to get a little crazy, you want to get a little funky, you want to get a little exotic and go for the home run and try to pay for, a house or something, by all means. I'm not going to tell you not to have fun, but 80-20 is kind of the accepted range there to gamble within your means, if that's how I'm playing it.
Love it. Yeah, that's great insight. Even I learned a bunch. I'm horrible at those, but maybe I'll start making some money now. Hey,
there you go. We're here to help. We're working on an optimizer and all that good stuff that's going to be free to the public. So, and we're always available on Twitter. We've got Discords, we've got Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it. There's a ton of options to get in touch with people that do this for a living. And I listen, I would be in a much nicer house if I was a DFS pro. Like, believe that. So I'm not out here shilling saying I have all the secrets. I pay attention to this stuff more than the average person could be, because this is my 9 to 5. I'm not going to an office. I'm not going to a school. I'm not going to a bank. Like, I'm paid to analyze this stuff. So feel free. Use me as a tool.
Love it. Yeah, it's
Thank
great.
you.
Of course.
I don't know. That's pretty much all I got here, Joe.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you, Kyle, coming on. We love talking, obviously, Bills Jets with the upcoming season. We'll kind of see if all your predictions come true, and we'll
every last
back
one.
in week 18 to see how you did with a scorecard. So
sure,
but no, man, no, definitely means a lot. We really appreciate it. It's been cool.
Of course, happy to have to make an appearance here. I appreciate you guys reaching out. Happy to do this again anytime you guys want. But before I get out of here, I do need a week 1 score for your guys' game here, Bills Jets.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm gonna say Buffalo 29, New York 23.
Okay.
29. That's an interesting score. I mean,
the Bills are an interesting team.
Aaron Rodgers' first game at MetLife Stadium. I mean, we beat him last year with Zach Wilson. How can we possibly lose this game? But I'm gonna stick with Kyle in the approach to how Aaron Rodgers. We don't need to score 35 points, so I'm gonna go 27. But the Jets defense is elite. Is going to hold the Bills to 27-13.
Wow. 13. I think I was regretting my
Quinnen Williams had 11 sacks in a scrimmage. You better hope Allen gets out of his way.
Yeah, against who?
I know. I think it was Carolina.
It was. Yeah. I feel better.
He's lucky he found Bryce Young. I mean, it was tough to find him back there.
Yeah. He's not a big guy.
That was one of the funniest Twitter clips. I don't know if anybody saw that with the reporter checking the microphone to see if it was the right height and saying he was 5'9". He wasn't sure if Bryce Hall was going to be able to see over the podium. I mean, guy, that was amazing.
That was good. And all these Deuce Vaughn clips from the Cowboys, like, the dude just pops up out of nowhere. Like, I see all these clips are saying it looks like a 5-year-old running around with a cell phone on the field. I think it's so apt, but the dude's been so elusive and it looks so good. It's the most relatable thing is, guys that aren't NFL size. Like, I was never going to play in the NFL, and this kid probably didn't think he was either. And right now he's out there looking like a human joystick. So I love it. And the height jokes is part of the territory. These guys play it off.
Oh yeah, CD Lamb posted the picture of like the little kids' cleats.
The cleats, oh my gosh,
that was hilarious.
I saw that one. Yeah,
that was fun.
What do you think about Bills Jets, Kyle?
I'm going to take the Bills to cover. They were one of my best bets for week 1 in the early line. The line's only 1.5. It feels a little disrespectful to the Bills right now. I think you're on the right track here with the score, Joe. I'm going to go 30-24. So kind of just, upping you by a point to a little more common score there. But yeah, I think they get the better of Rodgers and Allen makes a play late to kind of seal this up. But I could see it going either way. I think it's a good place to start Monday Night Football. I think the NFL scheduling committee did a great job with Chiefs Lions in that opener and then this game to close it. I think week one's looking good. I'm already excited for it.
Yeah, I don't know how I came up with 29, but after Glenn said after Glenn said 13 for the Bills, I'm like, all right, I feel a lot. That's a lot more likely than 13.
We've seen a lot of these preseason games. They end up funny.
Nobody ever wants 9 in a Super Bowl square, so that I knew that wasn't a good number. So you guys are both be 0-1 at the end of the first week. It's fine. It's okay. There's a lot of season left.
You think I'm only picking one game in week 1?
Doesn't Rodgers usually start off a little slow?
Slower, I mean, to a degree, but it's tough, and he hasn't been in a new situation for a long time. So we'll see. We'll see. He's playing week 3 of the preseason. Dude hasn't played in a preseason game in over 1,800 days. So we'll see where he's at rust wise. But I don't doubt that he can come out. He can sling it a little bit. If he gets support from that running game and keeps the Bills off the field, I just don't know how good that running game is going to be to open the season.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, a couple weeks, we'll find out.
That we will.
Can't wait. Thanks, man. This is awesome.
You bet.
Thanks. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Rivals Sports Pod. Please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also email us at rivalsportspod@gmail.com with any topics, ideas, or questions.